Well, hello there and welcome to the 2022 provincial election all candidates debate. My name is Jennifer Anderson. I am the moderator here. I am the executive director of the Georgina Chamber of Commerce and also the host of Mind Your Business right here on Rogers TV Georgina. The debate is produced by the Georgina Chamber of Commerce, partnered with Rogers TV Georgina. This televised debate will allow constituents to meet the candidates, learn about their platforms, and make an informed decision before casting their ballot. In an effort to cover topics relevant to York-Simcoe residents, the Georgina Chamber of Commerce requested the public submit questions for all candidates on their website prior to this event. All questions received were vetted to meet our time constraints and to avoid duplication. While we may not get to every question that was submitted, we hope to cover as many as possible during this next hour and a half. You have the ability to watch on TV and online thanks to Rogers TV Georgina. The debate will air multiple times on Channel 10, will be live streamed on rogerstv.com, on the Rogers TV YouTube channel, and will also be on georginachamber.com leading up to Election Day. We will be live on election night, covering the results close to home and right across the province. I would like to welcome the candidates now and thank them for their dedication and their efforts during this campaign. It is now my pleasure to introduce four of the candidates of the York-Simcoe riding who are seeking your vote on June 2nd. The order in which the candidates are being introduced was determined by random draw prior to the start of the debate. From left to right, the candidates are Brent Fellman, New Blue Party of Ontario; Zachary Tisdale, Ontario Libertarian Party; Julie Stewart, Green Party of Ontario; and Walter Alvarez Bardalis, Ontario Liberal Party. Also running in the provincial election but not attending today, Alana Hollander, Ontario Party; Spencer Yang Key, Ontario New Democratic Party; Caroline Mulrooney, Ontario PC Party; and Franco Colavecchia, Ontario Moderate Party. Before we begin the debate, let me tell you the ground rules that we will be following throughout this event. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes at the beginning for an opening statement. As mentioned, the order in which the candidates will be speaking was determined prior to the debate starting by random draw, and that order will be reversed for the 2 minutes that they have for closing statements. I will rotate through the candidates, giving each one an opportunity to answer a question first, and that will be followed by answers from the rest of the panel. Answers to the questions will be limited to 1 minute. Candidates wishing for an opportunity to comment on something that they have heard will raise their hands to be recognized, and we will get to them prior to the next question. Rebuttal opportunities may be restricted, though, due to time constraints. We do have a timekeeper here with us today to let us let the candidates know how much time is remaining for their statements and their answers. This will allow the candidates to know when they have 30 seconds remaining and 10 seconds remaining. At the end of their time, we will go on to the next candidate. We are looking forward today to a respectful and informative hour and a half discussion. We have an important decision ahead of us, and I encourage everyone to make the most of this opportunity by joining us over the next hour and a half. At this point, we're going to start our discussions with opening statements, and I would like to remind you all, to the candidates, that you have 2 minutes for your opening statements. I'd like to invite Brent to begin.
Hello to all constituents of York-Simcoe. My name is Brent Fellman, and I represent the New Blue Party of Ontario. First, I would like to thank Jennifer and the Georgina Chamber of Commerce for setting up this debate with Rogers TV. And second, I would like to thank all the candidates here for having the courage to run and to come here for this debate. This is what our society needs more of, more debate about the issues affecting us all in a respectful and honest fashion. Who is Brent Fellman? I'm a resident of Bradford. My 3 boys are 15, 18, and 21 years old and went to school in Bradford from JK through high school. I have coached hockey, basketball, baseball in the community. And for the past 6 years, I have been president of Innisfil Baseball. I am a community leader. In terms of education, I have 7 years of post-secondary education, receiving a Bachelor of Physical Education, a Bachelor of Education, and a diploma in civil engineering. I understand science and I review the data to make decisions. I understand small business owners as I ran a fence and deck business for 20 years. I also assisted my wife with her motel and restaurant business for over 20 years. I even spent a few years as a cook, and as far as I know, everyone survived my cooking. What I am passionate about is I have seen tremendous damage to our society due to government policies during the past 2 years. Businesses have been put under incredible strain due to lockdowns. Students have lost 2 years of proper education with school closures and online learning. People have lost their jobs. University and college students have been denied education. People have been denied necessary surgery due to unlawful segregation policies and mandates. Someone needs to speak up. If not me, then who? That's why I'm here today, to speak up and defend the freedoms of Ontarians. Thank you.
Zachary.
Hi, I'm Zachary Tisdale, running on behalf of the Libertarian Party, and we are the original party for freedom in Ontario since 1975. Libertarians believe in a political philosophy that upholds freedom and liberty as core values. We seek to increase individual responsibility, reduce the role of government in our personal lives, and promote freedom of association, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, economic freedom, and freedom of choice without harm to others. I never wanted to be a politician, but I was inspired to enter into the realm of politics after witnessing the vast government overreach during the COVID-19 pandemic as small businesses were destroyed by lockdowns, the rise in mental health and substance abuse issues from forced isolation, the failures of our healthcare system to provide us with adequate care, how people's medical rights were violated and their jobs were taken away. Property rights and travel rights were violated, how children's education and development was interrupted, and how dissenting voices were vilified and silenced, and how peaceful protests were violently suppressed. And by the increase in censorship by the government, media organizations, and big technology companies. I am the business and analytics segmentation lead at a mutual insurance company. I'm a fellow chartered insurance professional specializing in farm insurance. And I am the Associate of Insurance Data Analytics and the upcoming chair on the Kawartha Durham Council of the Insurance Institute of Canada. I grew up in Bradford, and I want to see freedom returned to the people of this area and promote their economic prosperity and return social freedom back to them. Please follow me on zacharytisdale.ca and on social media at ztisdale. Thank you.
Thank you, Zachary. Julie.
All right, thank you. My name is Julie Stewart, and I'm running for the Green Party. Before I begin, I'd like to thank all of the candidates for attending, the Chamber of Commerce for having us, Jennifer Anderson for moderating, and for everyone at home that's watching. I would also like to start by acknowledging that we are on the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples, whose presence continues here to this day. I would also like to acknowledge this is the treaty lands of the Mississauga of the Credit, and thank them and other Indigenous peoples for sharing this land with us. We'd also like to acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as our closest Indigenous community and partners in education. We acknowledge this land and the people because the first step to reconciliation is recognizing the existence of Indigenous people. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada calls to actions speak to education as key to reconciliation. A shared understanding of how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk into a better future. As you might have guessed, based on the version of the land acknowledgement that I chose, I'm a teacher. I work for the York Region District School Board, teaching grade 6, where I strive to teach my students about environmental stewardship and eco-friendly lifestyles. I'm a local resident, and I care deeply about what happens to York-Simcoe. I'm here to serve my community for the betterment of my community. We are in a climate crisis, and I'm incredibly alarmed with the direction that the current government is taking us. We need bold, urgent action and the right leadership. After so many years of Liberals and Conservatives, it's time to fix what's broken. We need new solutions to old problems. The Ontario Greens are presenting the people of York-Simcoe with a clear choice. If you want a livable future for your children, If you want a province that's going to succeed in the new climate economy, if you want to crush climate pollution, build livable, affordable, connected communities, then there's only one choice: vote green. Thank you.
Walter.
Thank you. My name is Walter Alvarez. I'm running for the Ontario Liberal Party. And I want to start by thanking the Chamber of Commerce for organizing this. It's excellent for our democratic process, and also my fellow candidates, because it takes a lot of courage to run these days and age with so much polarization, and yet here we are, so I commend you for that. So I want to start by telling you why I'm running. I'm running essentially because I want to give back to my community, to Ontario. Some of you may know that I grew up during a war, as a child of war and poverty, going to school with holes in my shoes, but with a heart full of dreams. And my parents, despite all the horror around me, they made me believe that there was a better place, and there is a better place. This is Ontario, what I call my personal promised land, where you rescued me from being a child of war and poverty, from being on the streets hungry, to standing right here before all of you as a doctoral student, as a federal employee, as so many things that I wouldn't be without your love and compassion, and that's why I'm doing this. It's because I care for you, and I want to dedicate all my intelligence to giving back to you, the people I love. I believe, since Aristotelian philosophy is the highest of privileges is to serve the society that one loves. Now, essentially, my platform is simple, going back to the basics: support education, support healthcare, support our seniors. And let's go back to that unity that I encountered when I came to Canada, where it didn't matter what political affiliation we had. I want to pull us back to dialogue, where conservatives, liberals, libertarians, when we can all just talk and solve problems together, because we cannot do it alone. We have to do it in unity. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you to all of our candidates for your opening remarks. And now let's move on to the questions. As mentioned, we're going to rotate through our candidates, starting with you, Zachary. All right. Housing affordability is a significant issue across Ontario. The availability and affordability of housing greatly impacts the cost of living for all Ontarians and limits the ability for our local businesses to attract and retain talent. What are your suggestions, your party's suggestions, on how to deal with the current lack of affordable housing?
Thank you. Well, in order to address the price of housing in the region, I believe it is imperative to reduce as much red tape that is blocking developers from building up the supply of housing in the region. We would look at introducing legislation that would strike down unnecessary zoning laws and anything that is restricting the development of housing in the region. We believe in building the transportation infrastructure that is required to get people to their homes, such as the Bradford Bypass, and look at supporting and building the Upper York sewage solution that would support housing development within the region. We fundamentally have a supply issue with more people coming into the province, and we need to build more homes, more affordable homes, and a wide variety of homes. And that involves getting government out of the way and allowing developers to build. Increased competition and supply will also help to reduce rent prices within the province. Thank you.
Julie.
Thank you. I have very different thoughts to that. The Green Party wants to support the low and middle class, and we recognize that housing costs are rising faster than incomes. The Green Party proposes that we build 100,000 new affordable rental units and renew 260,000 existing community homes so that people have access to safe, affordable housing. We want to protect renters by reinstate rent controls so people aren't priced out of their homes. The Bank of Canada found that 1 in 5 homes are bought by investors. To help families own homes, we want to get rid of that. We want to introduce a multiple home speculation tax and a vacant home tax. We want to end blind building to make it more transparent and help drive down the hassle costs.
Thank you. And that's what I love about dialogue, is that I agree with a lot of the things that my fellow candidates said, But essentially, I believe in Stephen Del Duca's solid plan to address the housing problem by building new houses, a lot of them in a period of 10 years. To be precise, 1.5 million new homes in a period of 10 years. We also should address speculation. People from foreign countries owning houses and just leaving them empty there, serving no purpose. I believe that we need to put a stop to that, because it's affecting the average Canadian. And also, I agree with what she said about building houses for the poor. It's a necessity that we build houses to address the homelessness problem, which is very spread out, and we intend to build 138,000 houses over the next few years, specifically for the poor.
Thank you. And Brent?
Well, I think we're all hitting the same topics here. We need more houses. It's a supply and demand issue. We need to build more. We need to do it responsibly, though. We need to have town councils decide where we have farmland, where we have protected areas, but we need to pick places where we're going to build. We have to get rid of the red tape so that builders can get to the business of building. We also need to train more people in the trades. What I hear from going door to door is that the people in the trades are getting out of the trades. I know HVAC, I heard 1/3 of HVAC trades are getting out of the trades. So we need more people trained in our schools to get into the trades so we can build more houses. We need to stop the speculation that we've been talking about here. We need to open up triplexes, duplexes, and that's how you're going to provide more housing.
Thank you. Julie, you'd like to debate?
Yes, the phrase red tape really tears at the environmentalist in me. If we want to call it red tape, that's okay, but there are environmental protections, bylaws that are there for a reason. The Greens are proposing that we build within existing build-up areas so that we're not continuing the sprawl. We want to build communities. The Greens are calling it 15-minute communities where people can live and work, play, all in one area so that we're not having to commute long distances. Urban sprawl is expensive. It's terrible for the environment. It destroys the farmlands. It destroys our wetlands. There are alternatives.
Well, I mean, there are developments that are being stalled because of red tape. They're already approved, they're already good, and if you don't have the workers to put up these houses, what are you going to do? You need to work on the trades. We need people in the trades.
Zachary.
Yeah, I'd like to address again the concept of red tape. So again, this is what's causing the housing crisis by blocking developers from being able to build homes in the region. There's lots of land out there outside of the Greenbelt that are available for developers to build homes, but there's restrictive zoning laws that are preventing developers from building these homes. And I'd also like to mention that there have been studies done that increasing population density leads to further problems like crime and mental health issues within the area. So I do not believe in increasing population density. I believe in building homes that people will want, things with like backyards and garages, homes that people dream about. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next question, okay? And this one's starting with you, Julie. The Upper York sewage solution is being proposed to address growth in Aurora, Newmarket, and East Gwillimbury. Many area municipalities, Georgina residents, and the Chippewas of Georgina Island have questioned the solution, concerned about the environmental impact it will have on Lake Simcoe. Are you in favor of the Upper York solution, yes or no? And please tell us why.
In short, no. I'm here, I favor the environment. I want to stand up for the environment. I want to make sure that the world that we're leaving the next generation is livable. The health of Lake Simcoe is paramount. It's vital to the Chippewas of Georgina Island, who are still on a boil water advisory. There was a study done, but the results of the assessments only looked at 1 year. They were missing the long-term impacts of the ecosystems, and they were also not considering the impacts of things like pharmaceuticals, microplastics, or personal care products in the water. I think we need to study the topic a lot more than we already have, and we do need to be more respectful of the Chippewas. Thank you.
Thank you. Walter.
The short answer, no, at this time. But the caveat is that I would need to look into the environmental potential damage that could be caused by this project. Now, one thing as a future scientist of the social sciences is that I like to gather all my information before making a decision. So if the studies indicate that this project could move forward without damaging the environment, then I'm willing to move forward and potentially support it. But as it stands right now, all the evidence I've seen is that there will be potential damage to the environment. So at this time, I'm not in favor of it.
Thank you. Brent?
I would be in favor of having the highest technology plant. We've been told that we can't use the big pipe anymore to go down to Durham. So we have to come up with our own solutions. We have the growth here, we have exploding growth. We have no choice really. We do need to do our own solution up here. That's what the province is basically saying. You got to take care of it yourselves now, guys. So if we want to have the growth, we want to build more houses, we have to have the plant, but it needs to be of the highest technology. It needs to be a 4-stage separation, not what you would see on the 2- and 3-stage separation. We need the highest technology possible because yes, the Chippewas, they rely on Lake Simcoe. They rely on the environment. So we need to make sure that they are very much involved in any of these discussions about treatment plants, and they need to be heard as well.
And Zachary?
The answer would be yes. I'm in favor of building the Upper York sewage solution because, again, we have a housing crisis in the region. And by dragging our feet on this solution, we're blocking those homes from being built. That sewage solution is reported to support the growth of up to 150,000 more people in the region. The fact of the reality is that there are already 15 sewage plants that pump effluent, that's cleaned water, back into Lake Simcoe. We've already spent $100 million of public money on proof of concepts and the environmental assessment. I believe that we need to build the sewage solution in order to allow for the homes to be built in the region that are required for the population growth. It's a very advanced, the technology is very advanced using reverse osmosis to reduce the amount of phosphorus that is going into the watershed. So I believe that we need to build that plant. Thank you.
Thank you. Walter?
I just wanted to say that as a person of mostly Central American indigenous ancestry, I have love for the land, for the earth, and we need to protect it. And what I'm saying is that if this issue needs to be addressed, it needs to be addressed, but it needs to be addressed scientifically. We don't start rushing into building something and then hope that it doesn't damage the environment. In science, we do it the other way around. We check the science first, we protect the environment first. Once we know that it's not going to damage the environment, then we move forward. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next question. Walter, we are starting with you. The 2022 Ontario Chamber of Commerce Economic Report found over 60% of businesses are experiencing labor shortages and expect to continue to face them over the next year. How does you and/or your party plan to address these long-standing shortages that have been worsened by the pandemic? What are your plans to support the workforce of the future? Walter.
Yeah, various ways. For instance, we believe in stimulating the small economies, small businesses. For example, by putting a hold on corporate income taxes on small businesses, especially for those ones that suffered financial losses during the pandemic. So with that surplus of funds that they won't be paying in income tax, they can hire personnel. And also, in regards of the second part of your question, the workers, we intend to up the minimum wage to $16 per hour so that poor people can live in dignified conditions with a dignified income so that they can provide for the basic necessities for their families. So those are two ways in which we will address it. Thank you.
Thank you. Brent.
Well, basically, what I didn't hear in the leaders' debate last night was anything about lockdowns. Lockdowns have basically given business owners no confidence that they can expand, no confidence that they can, really build their employee base. We need to say no more lockdowns. The science is in. The lockdowns did not save lives. Johns Hopkins University said that lives were only saved by 0.2% from lockdowns. They did a very extensive study on this. So we need to say no more lockdowns. And like I've already said, we need to train the workforce. We need to talk to our businesses and find out what is it that they need. For instance, like I just said, HVAC. How are we going to build houses? How are we going to do our air conditioning? And how are we going to build our furnaces if 1/3 of the workforce that puts those things in aren't there? We need to train them.
Thank you. In order to address the labor shortage would be to support sustainable levels of immigration. And again, that's providing by them with housing, by providing more housing, building the housing to allow them to live in the area. We want to ensure the immigration of skilled workers that will contribute positively to the economy and support the infrastructure required to grow the economy. We would look at cutting unnecessary regulation and cutting taxes in order to promote economic growth and spur on business innovation. This will allow the economy to grow, which will provide more jobs for people out there. In order to support those jobs, again, we need to look at education outside of maybe the historical academic sciences and look at supporting the trades that's required to, again, build the houses that are required to support more skilled workers in the region. Thank you.
Thank you. I think to be able to build a prosperous economy, we need to look ahead. We need to look at where is the world going. I'm going to talk about renewable energy. I think it is a huge growing sector that Ontario should really be getting on board with. As renewable energy becomes more common, the need for education, expertise, and experienced workforce will increase. The Ontario Greens want to help this. They want to lead with initiatives that would employ thousands of skilled people and reduce home electricity costs. The Greens want to offer free tuition to 60,000 young people for training in new climate jobs and guarantee them employment through an apprenticeship afterwards. Canada's clean energy sector will employ 559,000 Canadians by 2030 in jobs like insulating homes, manufacturing electric vehicles, and maintaining wind farms. I think we need to look to the future as well as supporting the businesses that are struggling at the time.
Thank you. Walter.
Just quickly, I just wanted to add that I agree with the candidate that spoke about immigration. I'm an immigrant, and I believe immigrants contribute a lot to the economy, so we need more immigrants. Under Stephen Del Duca's plan, we want to empower the province to handle our own immigration, just like the province of Quebec does it, so that we can bring the workforce that's needed. If we need doctors, we want to bring doctors, but we want to handle it ourselves at the provincial level. Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to our next question, starting with you, Brent. With the focus on spending to deal with the ongoing pandemic, what is your party's plan to not only balance the budget, but also to reduce the deficit, and in what timeline?
Well, I mean, when you're talking about deficits, you need to address waste. I mean, we all know, we all want to spend money on healthcare, we want to spend money on education, but we need to look at the waste. There's a lot of waste in our government. Let me give you one example. Why do political parties get $10 million a year? Okay, the New Blue Party has candidates in every riding in Ontario. We don't get any funding. That right there, that's $10 million we could put back into the pot that's totally unnecessary. There's all sorts of waste. To be honest, I don't think the media and the news should be receiving a lot of funding from the government. It's a conflict of interest if the news is supported by the government, okay? The news, if you're supported by the government, you're just going to throw out softball questions to Doug Ford so he can hit it out of the park, okay? That money should be directed to education and healthcare.
Yes, I would also like to echo sentiments around eliminating wasteful spending, as well as handouts for special interest groups, as well to the established political parties, or again, Doug Ford's like $500 million handout he gave to the Toronto Star for their online gambling license. I believe that's just crony, corporatism right there. The Fraser Institute has, demonstrated that we can balance the budget within the next year by reducing overall spending by less than 5%. Back to 2015 levels. That would balance the budget almost immediately. And I don't believe in balancing budgets by raising taxes. I actually believe that we need to cut taxes in order to spur on further economic growth. the growth of the economy will generate a greater tax base, and that will help us balance the budget quicker while giving people more money back in their pocket in order to spend how they see fit. Thank you.
Julie.
When we talk about deficits, budgets are about making priorities. Our priority shouldn't be to give tax breaks to those who make the most money, or to give priorities to subsidies for fossil fuels in the billions of dollars. Deficits is not about how much there is, it's about how we're going to spend that money and how smart we are going to be while spending that money. There's also money that's out there that's not being collected. The CRA is going to chase someone who owes $200, but the person who owes $80,000 might have a good lawyer and isn't going to pay that money. I think we should be investing in social support programs, healthcare, education. Investing in social programs pays for itself several times over. If we're talking homelessness, for example, every $10 spent on supported housing saves almost $22 in healthcare and in the justice system.
Thank you. Walter.
A lot of good points that Julie made, but I wanted to add that as a man of science, I wish I could tell you that we could balance a budget in a matter of a year, but it's just impossible to do. So what we have to do is we have to address the waste spending that the Ford administration did, or that it intends to do, so that we can reallocate those funds to things that are more urgent. For example, the construction of the 413 highway will put a stop to that immediately, because that's only going to save riders a few seconds per ride, and it's going to ravage our beautiful land, the farmland that's giving us food. Just for the sake of saving a few seconds per ride, I don't want to save a few seconds per ride. So we need to reallocate those funds and put them into education. And in terms of the balancing the budget, we have a realistic plan that will balance it by 2028. Thank you.
I'm going to move on to the next question. This one is beginning with you, Zachary. What are the elements of your party's policy that speak to climate change and green energy?
So personally, I believe the way that we need to tackle climate change is by investing in energy sources that do not contribute to any greenhouse gases. Now, the Green Party, they like to talk a lot about the renewable energy, such as solar and wind. However, we've seen that these forms of energy are very expensive. They're intermittent, i.e. the sun is not always shining and the wind is not always blowing, and that doesn't provide the stable power base that is required for a province. I believe in nuclear energy. Nuclear energy already provides 60% of the energy needs for the province. It produces no greenhouse gases, and we're able to tap into Canada's large uranium mines in order to supply the nuclear power plants. They've been in operation in the province for over 50 years, running safe and effective, and even the state of California has just admitted that they need to keep their last remaining nuclear power plant online in order to support their energy needs. Thank you.
Yep. Julie.
You're absolutely right. I'm going to talk about renewables. With the climate crisis that we're in right now, we need to take immediate and drastic action to reduce and avoid the worst of the climate catastrophe, phasing out fossil fuels and investing in renewables instead. Ford is taking us in the completely wrong direction with energy. He's embracing high-cost, dirty sources of energy and ramping up gas power plants. It's simply wrong that we have a government that's so opposed to renewables, especially now that the price is so low. Perhaps what Zachary did not know, since 2010, the cost of solar has dropped 90%. Wind has dropped by 70% since 2010. It is the way of the future. The International Energy Agency, which is a Paris-based organization, has said no more fossil fuels. So renewables are the way of the future. Nuclear, I could support, but I want us to think Chernobyl, nuclear waste.
Thank you, Walter.
I think that we need to take steps where everybody can participate in protecting the environment. And things sometimes are not as complicated as we make them out to be. For example, if we win, if the Liberals win, we intend to give a rebate for people that want to buy electric cars to the tune of $9,500. That is going to start the process of cutting emissions for the years to come. And our objective is that in a few years, we can have zero emissions of all vehicles and set a target to only sell and buy zero emissions vehicle by 2030. So I think it's a very complex problem, but with simple solutions, if everybody participates in the solution, we can make progress, and I believe the Lucas plan is very solid in that regard.
Thank you. Brent.
Well, again, we're all talking about renewables. I like what Zach said about nuclear. Nuclear is the way to go. It provides tons of capacity and it's clean. Hydroelectric produces a lot of electricity and it's clean. So, I mean, these are consistent. The water keeps flowing, the nuclear is always there. And if you have wind and solar, you still need the backups of nuclear and you still need the backups of hydroelectric. And the other things with wind, it's like it's famine or feast. When the wind's really blowing, then we have to pay to get rid of it. And the deals that we're in right now with these wind energy contracts, they are way above market price. And we need to address this cost because people should not decide between buying groceries or paying their hydro bill. So we need to look at what is it going to cost us as well.
Thank you. All right, next question. We're starting with Julie. Oh, absolutely.
I forgot we had one more. To kind of piggyback on the electric vehicles, the Green Party is planning to do that as well. I would like to point out that Ontario is falling way behind the other provinces with getting electric vehicles out. Mr. Ford said that we've tripled the amount of vehicles, electric vehicles that we're selling. This is true, from 1% to 3%. In British Columbia, 13% of new car sales are electric vehicles. Quebec, 9.9, Yukon, 4.7, Ontario, 3. So I think there is a lot of room for growth. They're doing it in other parts of Canada, so why shouldn't we?
Zachary, you had a comment.
You know, electric vehicles, they're great in concept, but they're very expensive. Like the cheapest Tesla that is $60,000, right? It's very unaffordable for the average person to afford an electric vehicle. The state of California has already introduced rolling blackouts where they had to tell people to not charge up their electric vehicles because the power grid couldn't handle all the people that were charging up their vehicles. In order to have electric vehicles, we need to have the power supply in order to be able to charge them. And so again, we need to invest in reliable energy that doesn't pollute the planet, and that again is nuclear power as well as the hydroelectric.
Brent.
Thank you.
We also need to use some common sense as well, like the carbon tax that's been put on our gasoline. We look at the cost of fuel. And the idea of carbon tax is that it will decrease people's desire to drive gas-powered vehicles and will switch over to a Tesla. But as Zach said, the cost is just too high. So most people can't afford to move over to a Tesla. Most people can't afford to take out their furnace and get a geothermal put into their yard. So it really doesn't change. It might change a little bit, but not what it's costing us in our pockets.
Walter.
I agree with all of them. Yeah, it's impossible to afford a car that's electric right now, and that's why we're going to address it by giving a direct rebate to the consumer to the tune of almost $10,000. That's a big help for somebody who's struggling. It reduces a huge percentage of the price, and I think we should pursue electric vehicles. It's the way of the future.
All right, I'm going to move on to the last question before we take a break. Julie, this one's to start with you. Small and medium-sized businesses have been significantly affected by the pandemic. What is your party's plan to assist these businesses with economic recovery and growth?
Small businesses are the backbone of our economy. It is essential that we support them. In the past 10 years, 87% of new jobs in the private sector have come from small businesses, not giant corporations. An additional benefit of that is their success stays within the community that they're in. Therefore, it's in everyone's interest to support them. The Green Party would like to fairly tax small businesses to give them a chance to get back on their feet. By lowering the tax roll, taxes that they pay, regardless of whether the business makes money or not. The Green Party would also like to get rid of the tax credit that landlords get from having lingering storefronts. Why are we allowing people to hold on to these properties, to drive it up and to make it less accessible to small businesses.
Thank you, Julie. Walter.
Yeah, my answer is short. What I mentioned before, put a hold on corporate income tax for small businesses that are struggling due to the pandemic. But also we will make $300 million available to small businesses that are struggling still because of the pandemic and how business got hurt financially because of that. So we'll help them with loans. And for those small businesses that are struggling paying the loans that they already have, we're going to help them out. We're going to backstop the loans that they currently have until they recover. And that's how we would like to address it. By helping them now, they are going to emerge financially and help themselves. But right now, they need a hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Brent.
Well, like I've mentioned before, a lot of businesses have PTSD right now. We just went through 2 years of lockdowns, not knowing you're open, you're closed. How can you arrange, how can you plan anything? How can you deal with all your employees? How can you deal with all of your costs? We need to tell them no more lockdowns. Lockdowns didn't work. The science is in now. We should never do lockdowns. It should be a dirty word. And we need to give all of our businesses that confidence. Again, we need to ask them and find out, it's the staffing. There's a real problem with staffing. So we need to find out what businesses need, and we need to get our schools, colleges, and universities providing those skills.
Thank you. Zachary.
During the pandemic and the lockdowns, I had to read commercial insurance cancellation reports and watch as small business after small business had to close, and shut down forever because of the lockdowns that were imposed by the government in order to handle the pandemic, which, as we found out, were not necessary. There are other jurisdictions throughout the world that did not close down businesses, and they were able to keep their deaths per capita rates low, such as Sweden, South Dakota, as well as Florida. I would oppose any further COVID lockdowns and restrictions and allow businesses to freely open and have the confidence that they can remain open again. I also believe in deregulation. That's getting government out of the way and letting businesses thrive by having the freedom to choose what products they want to sell. For example, cannabis stores in Ontario all must purchase their products from the government. I would get the government out of the way as much as possible, cut taxes, let people shop, and support our small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments? Walter.
I just want to mention that in terms of deregulation, I understand where he's coming from, but let's talk about it for a moment, about the situation that the seniors in long-term care went through. That required government intervention, and the Ford administration neglected to intervene sooner, and that caused a lot of pain to our seniors. I believe to the extent that it saves life, government intervention is required. Thank you.
Brent. Then Zachary.
One thing I'd like to add also, the vaccine mandates, these segregation policies that were put in. I mean, business owners, that's a whole group of people that are not going to go to a restaurant. That's a whole group of people that are not going to go to movie theaters. That's a whole group of people that you've segregated from society, and now we know the science doesn't support that anymore. So that should never happen. And putting that extra burden of all these QR codes and all this extra protocols that these businesses have to do, that put an extra burden on businesses, which was completely unnecessary. Should never have been done.
I would just comment that the original emergency that we had with COVID was way back in early 2020. Okay, in 2020. That was the original emergency with that initial lockdown. That was acceptable and tolerable. We didn't know what we were dealing with then. But even as soon after that, even in May of 2020, we knew that this virus attacked, elderly populations, people that were not healthy. That's where the emergency restrictions should have come in, to protect vulnerable populations and not enforce that on all of society at large. We've seen from the data that did not work and has had tons of other damage all across society. And so that should never have happened.
Julie.
With regards to the vaccines and the vaccine passport, I applaud that. I want to be able to go into a store confident that the people I'm walking next to, that I'm passing next to, are doing as much as they can to make me safe. And so that when I come home, I'm not bringing disease back to my family. Yes, there was a little bit of a burden with having to check that with the small businesses, but I think it was worth it.
Would you shut
Thank you.
unvaccinated people out of grocery stores?
Zachary, hold that thought. Thank you. I'm sorry, we have to head to break. Stay tuned, there's still more with the 2022 provincial election all candidates debate. And welcome back to the 2022 York-Simcoe provincial election all candidates debate. I'm Jennifer Anderson, moderating this debate for you today. Also the executive director of the Georgina Chamber of Commerce. We have 4 candidates who are joining us from the York-Simcoe riding here tonight of the 8, and want to continue on with questions. We have a lot of discussion that we still need to have. So, Walter, I'm going to start with you for our next question. We've been rotating through our candidates. Healthcare comprises more than 40% of the provincial budget. What strategies will you implement to strengthen our local healthcare system, including, for example, long-term care, home care, and mental health services? And how will you control healthcare costs and create efficiencies without compromising services? Walter, you have a minute.
Okay, so just quickly, in my PhD, my specialty is healthcare access, and I believe that we need to protect our healthcare services and the universal healthcare model that we have. It's very important. Now, the way in which we're going to address all these complex challenges are, for LTC, for long-term care, we need to stop the for-profit model. That for-profit model, profit and health, those words do not go together. That's an essential service that the government needs to provide. So we're going to eliminate for-profit long-term care. We're also going to build more hospitals. We're going to repeal that abhorrent legislation that the Ford administration passed, where our hero nurses, their salaries were capped at the time when they were serving lives. That is an aberration, morally and ethically speaking, so we're going to stop that. We're going to pay them better. We're going to train more nurses, hire more nurses and doctors, and that's just a few of the ways in which we're going to address it.
Thank you, Walter. Brent.
The biggest problem in our healthcare system right now is staffing. A friend of mine, his mother just had a stroke, and midway through when they were there, she had rolled over and she couldn't roll herself back. She asked her neighbor, "Can you call the emergency nurse to come and roll me back over?" That took over 2 hours for that to happen. And anytime she's needed help, sometimes it's hit or miss whether anyone's even going to come. She's only seen a doctor once in 5 weeks. It's the staffing. That staffing is the major problem that we're dealing with right now. Why would we fire doctors and nurses because they didn't want to take an injection that doesn't stop the transmission of the disease? Okay? Why couldn't we offer them rapid testing? Why couldn't we offer them other solutions? Let's hire all those people back. Let's stop these segregation policies. Bring them back. Our healthcare needs, our nurses and our doctors are our heroes, and we need to support them.
Thank you, Brent. Zachary.
I would have to echo sentiments there from Brent about hiring back all the unvaccinated nurses. I think it was absolutely ridiculous during a hospital capacity crisis that we were terminating nurses, firing them from their jobs over a vaccine that has been proven to not prevent the transmission of COVID. When I look around the world, no one is looking to Ontario and trying to import our healthcare system into their jurisdictions. Okay, and that says a lot to me. It says that we need to look outside of the province. We need to look at new solutions, new options, more options for healthcare, rather than just throwing more money at the problem, as all the establishment parties have done and continue to do and have failed to achieve better frontline care. That's what people want. They want to be assured that when they need care, that they're able to get it. And we've seen throughout the pandemic that our healthcare system, which is comprised of not only public, but there are private healthcare providers in the province. I believe we need more of this to provide more options, more freedom of choice to the people of Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie.
Thank you. You mentioned mental health care. That's something that the Greens are very much supporting. We would like to expand what is covered under OHIP and increase spending on mental health to 10% of the overall healthcare budget. We feel this is particularly important now coming out of the pandemic. As a teacher, I see the impacts of the pandemic that have had on my students. The Greens are putting forward a 30-day wait max for children's mental health services to support people in either other ways, decriminalize substance use, and Bill 124. You've mentioned lack of staffing. Absolutely. If we're going to call our nurses heroes, we need to treat them like such. Freezing their salaries, increasing their overtime hours. In 2020, nurses worked almost 10 overtime hours on average.
Thank you.
Just a quick input about our plan for mental health services. We intend to spend $3 billion over the next 3 years to improve the whole system of mental health care for all the citizens of Ontario, so that those people that need mental health services, whether they're employed or unemployed, they can get them, because we need the mental health to function as a society, as human beings. And the Ford administration simply neglected that issue because they got money and they spend it any which way they want to waste it, but the things that are important, like mental health for the citizens, they just neglect it. They just worry about giving money to the huge corporations that sponsor them and that provide donations to their campaigns. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Zachary.
You know, one way that we can improve the mental health of the people of Ontario is by avoiding lockdowns and forced isolation. That's one of the reasons for the mental health pandemic that we're experiencing now, was because of forced isolation policies in order to deal with COVID-19. It's also led to substance abuse issues as well, as people were forced to stay inside their homes without social contact for long periods of time. We can improve the mental health by getting government out of the way and staying out of people's personal lives. And again, that's with targeted approaches to dealing with the pandemic, not blanket sledgehammers that hit the entire population.
Julie.
Has the pandemic exacerbated mental health and increased substance use? Absolutely. But it was there before. It's always been an issue in our healthcare that needs to be addressed. I think privatizing it is going to price a lot of people out of being able to get the health that they need. If you've ever looked to go and talk to a counselor, $100 to $200 to $250 an hour, it's not something the average person could afford.
I just want to read a summary of a report by StatsCan. In a report titled Provincial Death Counts and Excess Mortality, the government agency reviewed the number of deaths between January 2020 and April 2021 and concluded that 5,535 Canadians under the age of 65 died of indirect consequences due to the pandemic. Yet, over that same period of time, 1,380 Canadians died of COVID. It was not a good trade-off.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next question. Brent, I'm starting this one off with you. The Bradford Bypass is a hot topic during this election. While some are looking forward to the bypass becoming a reality to ease traffic and growth in our communities, others are concerned about the environmental impact it will have on the health of Lake Simcoe and the Green Belts. Where do you stand on the Bradford Bypass?
Well, I'm okay with the Bradford Bypass, but we need to be careful with it. It's going through some very sensitive areas on the tributaries that are going into Lake Simcoe. And as we've talked about many times tonight, Lake Simcoe is an important part of our ecosystem. The last environmental assessment that was done was back in 2002. And there's talk that they don't want to do another environmental assessment. And why not? That's 20 years ago. The technology has improved a lot in 20 years. We need to make sure that it's going to be good, because a responsible government, they don't look for just the here and now. They look 20 years down the road. What is going to happen? And it needs to be green. I talked to the Sonia Rankin, who's the AECOM director there, and I want to see that the sound is going to be controlled. I want to see land mounds. I want to see tree growth so that the sound is not going to affect me. I live less than a kilometer away from where this is going to be, and I don't want that sound. So that needs to be controlled.
Thank you.
I believe and support the construction of the Bradford Bypass. You know, I lived in Bradford almost 30 years ago, so I've seen the growth and development of that town throughout my life. And back in the day when my parents moved to Bradford, it was because of new highways like the 400 allowed them to work in the community, live in the community while commuting to their jobs down in the GTA. And I believe that we need this transportation infrastructure to support the forecasted population growth in the region. And we need transportation infrastructure to move people and goods across the region. I believe there has been a newer environmental assessment based on the research I've done. I believe there was one done in 2014, which is a bit more recent than 2002. And that environmental assessment shows that we're going to protect the environment. We got to be careful with what we do, but we still need this infrastructure. We can't block it always because of an environmental assessment. 85% of the population of Bradford back in 2016 supported the building of the bypass. All governments support the bypass. Let's build it. Thank you.
Julie.
Certainly not all governments support the bypass. The Green Party vehemently against it. I think the Bradford bypass should be canceled. The Ford government is pushing it through under the guise of COVID, and they've been doing this with their environmentally destructive agenda. This highway is yet another example. The Holland Marsh is part of the Greenbelt. It is one of the most fertile areas in Canada. This highway will flatten Ontario's food supply and pollute the already at-risk Lake Simcoe, increase floods. The Rescue Lake Simcoe Coalition reports that the highway is expected to negatively impact 17 hectares of the Holland Marsh, 22 hectares of high-quality woodland, 9.5 hectares of significant wetland, and 33 hectares of significant wildlife. The government has said that the bypass would save drivers 35 minutes, but they have yet to provide us with this study. A comprehensive study did look at the effects that this would have on Lake Simcoe. However, the studies that were done predicted adverse effects to the fish habitat, storm and flooding, groundwater contamination.
Thank you, Julie. Walter.
Thank you. I have found that speaking with a lot of the citizens of York-Simcoe, there is a lot of division on the issue. Some want it, other citizens don't. But here is my position on it. I believe in development, but I also believe in the development to be sustainable. It has to be sustainable, it has to be scientific. I think it's a bit irresponsible from the Ford administration to start putting signs everywhere and saying, this is where the Bradford bypass will be, but the environmental studies are not completed. We need to see those assessments because you don't just start constructing and then just pray that it's not going to damage the environment for the future generations. We're not the only humans that are going to be here. We're going to have children. They're going to have children. We need to protect it from them. So in short, I would like to see the assessment completed and there make a scientifically sound decision based on science, based on environmental protection, and if it's feasible, protecting the environment, then we will move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Zachary, you had a rebuttal, and then Julie.
Thank you. I believe that environment assessment has already been completed and that the government is going to be working with developers in order to ensure that there's no unnecessary damage. We need to minimize the impact of the highway and have green solutions such as hills rather than concrete barriers in order to block noise. And with regards to the Holland Marsh, less than 0.4% of the marsh will be crossed by the Bradford bypass, which is a very small fraction of the overall marsh. So the marsh itself, will not be impacted or negatively damaged by the building. And when I said governments, I referred to the municipal and provincial governments. All the municipal governments in the region believe that the highway should be built, as well as the provincial government when the Doug Ford PCs were in power. Thank you.
I agree. I think we need to look long-term. I don't think we need to be looking short-sighted. Might it be something that's convenient? Sure. But are we plowing through environmentally significant land? Are we paving it over? Are we fragmenting habitats? There's no argument against that plowing, paving over a marsh is not fragmenting that habitat. We're losing a lot of our natural development, and I'm really, really worried that with the Bradford bypass having the highway there, that's just open season for development, urban sprawls all the way through, which would increase congestion.
Walter.
Just quickly, I agree with her. And I heard the previous argument before that, oh, there was an assessment done already. Yeah, but this assessment is decades old. Technology has progressed, and now we will be better able to tell if there will truly be damage to the environment. And if we truly care for the environment and the future generations, and not just pandering to voters, we need to trust the science and the current environmental study that will be the latest information, and then we'll take it from there. If it's prudent and fiscally responsible and environmentally responsible, then we'll move forward. Thanks.
Brett?
I mean, I appreciate a lot of what Zach says, but I would like you to show me this 2014 after, because I just read I think it was an article just recently done, and they said that the last assessment was 2002. So maybe my information's wrong, but I would like you to show me that assessment.
Okay. We said this was a hot topic. That's good. Let's move on to the next question. This question is beginning with you, Zachary. Georgina is a popular tourism community, and like many other areas across the province, felt the impact of the pandemic on our tourism businesses, cultural organizations, attractions, and events. What are some ways you would leverage support from your government so our community can capitalize on tourism, especially as we continue to reopen and recover? You have 1 minute.
Thank you. So again, you're talking about recovery, and in order to promote tourism, I believe that we can promote freedom, and that means removing any of the further COVID restrictions, opening businesses up in order to allow people to want to even visit the region. I believe that we need environmental protection is important. We want to protect Lake Simcoe so that people come to the region and they want to ice fish in the wintertime and visit the region and swim in the beautiful lakes. And that's why I believe in something like the Upper York sewage solution, which has been shown through the advanced technology to protect the lake and keep things like phosphorus down. And also try to close down the, I think it's the open sewage lagoons that are in the region as well. We need to ensure that people want to visit the region, and that is through freedom.
Thank you. Julie?
I think living in York-Simcoe, we're very blessed to be up in nature. I think in terms of tourists, that's definitely something that this region offers. Lake Simcoe, beautiful tourist destination, but we need to make sure that we're protecting that. If we are polluting Lake Simcoe and not keeping it healthy, it's not going to be a tourist destination. People aren't going to want to go swimming or boating or ice fishing up there.
Thank you. Walter?
Yes, I would like to state that sometimes we wish that we could postulate simple solutions for complex problems, but that is simply not the case. To address the issue of small businesses and tourism, we had to approach it from a holistic manner. So for instance, we need to support the small businesses because they're struggling financially. So restaurants, all places that tourists will visit, they need to be safe from bankruptcy, and they need help from the government right now, essentially. But at the same time, we need to provide support for the employers. We need to have other creative ways to promote tourism. For example, under Stephen Del Duca's plan for transportation, Boca Ride, for $1, you could travel from distant places and come here. And I believe there are many ways that can be done, but it has to be in combination from many approaches, not just one single approach.
Thank you, Walter. Brent?
We have to be open to festivals. We have to be open to people gathering again. We need to get away from this fear of people. There are ways we know how to deal with COVID now. I mean, people have been afraid to get together. We need to tell everybody, look, we know how to deal with this now. Okay, let's move on. Let's bring in the festivals. Let's bring in thing that's going to bring traffic to our community. Yes, Lake Simcoe is critically important. Whatever we're doing, we have to watch that, make sure that Lake Simcoe is going to be protected. Ice fishing and boating and all that stuff going on, it's very important to this community. We also have to, basically, we have to get rid of this inability to travel. We have to tell Mr. Trudeau, let's allow people to travel. There are people right now that can't get on a plane and travel in their own country. A friend of mine has a wedding out in Halifax. He can't fly because he's unvaccinated. Let's get rid of that rule and let's bring more people in so they can travel here.
Thank you, Brent. Good.
Just quickly, I'm not sure if I'm misunderstanding, but during the pandemic, especially the latter part of the pandemic, most of the people that were dying were unvaccinated, and that breaks my heart. How can we just say, no, nobody gets vaccines, let's just pretend that nothing is happening? People are dying, people were dying, and whenever, hopefully there won't be another pandemic, but if there is, we need to address the issue responsibly, save lives and not just pander to voters. That's all I have to say for now.
Zachary.
Individuals' bodies do not belong to the state. Okay, I have to make that very clear. We cannot force people to take a vaccine. We need to provide them with information and persuasion, but we should not be forcing vaccinations on anyone, and that includes taking away their jobs or shutting them out of society. Yes, vaccines work, they help, but they're not a 100% foolproof solution as we have seen, and we need to respect bodily autonomy. Thank you.
Julie, then Brent.
I'm quick. Isn't it something like 90% on average of Canadians that are vaccinated? So when we're talking about not having people being able to come into the area, it's a small percentage of people.
Brent?
10, 15%, it's not small. Let me just give you some very recent statistics from COVID-19 Ontario /data. Cases per 100,000, unvaccinated 7.64. Boosted 15.72. You're twice as likely to have COVID if you're boosted, according to the recent statistics. Hospitalizations, unvaccinated 17%, vaccinated 83%. ICU, unvaccinated 25%, vaccinated 75%. Deaths per 100,000, unvaccinated 0.09, boosted 0.08. Not much of a difference there. It doesn't make sense. Let's stop this nonsense.
Okay, I'm going to continue. We're getting close on time here. Julie, this one is for you. What are some of the opportunities you see for our region to grow economically and socially? 1 minute.
I think we've kind of touched on some of that before. Supporting our small businesses. I would also like to see innovation. And I'd like to see that coming from the new green energy sector. I would like to see people being trained for jobs, going into fields that may or may not even exist yet. I would like to see people working together with small businesses to help them lower their operational costs. The Greens is offering a retrofit program, anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 for people to make your building more efficient. That could be a way to help small businesses as well as to get another small business, because the person who's coming in to help you is also part of a small business.
Thank you. Walter.
Yes, I have similar thoughts, and I believe that we need to take a holistic approach. And as I mentioned before, we need to stimulate the economy, help small businesses that are struggling. But that's in terms of the immediate future, but we also need to think down the road. And in terms of innovation, for students to innovate, they have to have smaller class sizes. So we need to improve the quality of education of our children and young people, so they will provide innovative solutions that will grow the economy. We need to give them environments that are conducive to learning, but bigger class sizes, they're simply detrimental to the students, and they overwork the teachers. And on that note, we need to support the teachers as well, and we need to essentially approach it from a holistic approach.
Thank you. Brent.
Repeat the question there. I missed that. Sorry.
I can. Now that I've moved my page here, let me just grab.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. What are some of the opportunities you see for our region to grow economically and socially?
Economically and socially. Well, I mean, we've been talking about lockdowns all night. We've been talking about getting people together. Like, one of the things that I was very excited about, I'm an occasional teacher in the wintertime, And at the school I went to, for the first time, there was a basketball game, and it was a semifinal game, and the stands were packed, and the school spirit that we saw was amazing. And this is what students have been missing in schools, this social interaction. We don't realize how important it is. We are social beings. We need to be together. We need to celebrate together. And we need to basically say, from here on in, we are going to be together and celebrate together.
Thank you. Zachary.
Well, the answer is obvious, and that's freedom, both economic and social freedom. And that's what libertarianism is all about. I would fight inflation, the rising cost of living, by reducing the size and cost of government. That is what's holding us back, is the size and cost of government. I would eliminate wasteful spending and handouts for special interest groups, advocate for people who have lost their job over their vaccination status, cut the HST from 13% down to 10%, so people have more money in their pocket to promote spend at the businesses that they want to support and to send to the charities or causes that they believe in, such as the fight against climate change. I would empower people and businesses through deregulation and lower taxes, eliminating the carbon tax, reducing personal income taxes, cutting the corporate tax rate from 11.5% down to 10%, and then down to 8% within 5 years. This will generate immense economic growth and provide freedom back to the people of the region and all of Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to the last question. With each of you, we've been giving 1 minute, but we are less than 4 minutes away from our closing statements. So we're going to shorten this time to 30 seconds, just a very brief answer. While we know that York-Simcoe is made up of 3 different municipalities, as the Georgina Chamber and the Georgina TV station, we are very partial to this municipality and this area. What is your favorite hidden gem in our municipality? Walter, I'm going to start with you.
My favorite hidden gem, to be honest with you, it's its people. I could name a bunch of landmarks, but when I come here, I feel like I'm in the little town where I grew up in Guatemala. They embrace me with their friendliness, and I just feel like I'm with family. So to me, it's not a physical gem, it is the people that make this great place, Georgina.
Thank you. Brent.
I think we've talked about it all night tonight, the lake. I mean, this region is surrounded by Lake Simcoe and all the rivers that are involved in that. It provides so much to the Chippewas, it provides so much to the people, the recreation it provides. The lake, I think, is our hidden gem, for sure.
Very good. Zachary?
Well, my hidden gem would be my original family home here in Bradford on Northgate. Again, my oldest memories are of Bradford in the region. And it makes me just think about how many people are being shut out from owning a home and starting a family and having that starter home. And that's why I believe that we need to, again, promote housing development in the region so that people can have that opportunity to start a family and own their own home. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have talked about the lake quite a bit. When I was teaching a grade 1-2 class at Lakeside in Keswick, a place that a lot of my students really enjoyed going was to a skate park. It was a place where they could go and they could ride bikes, they could socialize with each other, burn out all of that extra energy, and I think that would be a hidden gem.
Very good. Thank you, and thank you to all of our candidates for the questions. This concludes the question and debate portion of the event. At this point, I will ask that candidates present their closing statements. We're going to go in reverse order than we did off the top. So, Walter, we are starting with you. 2 minutes.
I just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity, and to the citizens of York-Simcoe, I wanted to say that I'm ready to serve. I have the government experience, I have the academic credentials, I have the love and the passion, but most importantly, I have the desire to serve York-Simcoe with all my heart and with all my intelligence. Right now, there is just too much polarization in politics, and I think we need to work in unity, like I said in my beginning statement. We will not be able to move the province forward if we continue with the divisive attitudes. So I believe that together we can bring the province to a better place, but we need to do it together. And to the conservative voters out there, I just wanted to tell you that if I win, you will have my ear. If you come to me with ready to have an intelligent discussion about policy, those that come to me with ideas, I will never push you away. Even if you're a conservative, talk to me too. You will be listened to by me, so that I will be representing every citizen of York-Simcoe. So all I can do is offer to serve you to the best of my ability. And if my message of love, compassion, going back to the basics, to strengthening our healthcare system, to supporting education, supporting our nurses, and to do it with compassion and with unity, to continue being an example to the world in terms of working together like we were in the beginning of the pandemic, if that message resonates to you, I can tell you right now that I'm ready to serve. So if it resonates with you, you know what to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Julie.
Thank you for watching today. This election has a lot at stake. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's be real. Let's be clear. The climate crisis is the biggest crisis that we have ever faced. For years, the cry from climate inactivists was that we just could not afford to go green. But now more than ever, we are seeing the cost of that thinking. Basements are flooding, forest fires are growing in intensity, extreme weather is costing us millions of dollars each year. So it is economical to address climate change. We don't need half measures or no measures when addressing climate change. This means dealing quickly with Ontario's top polluters: transportation, energy production, and buildings. These changes also come with opportunities for Ontario Home to become the new leader in the climate economy. Clean tech space is the fastest growing sector on the planet. It's estimated by 2050 that there will be $8 trillion invested in renewable energy around the world. For Ontario not to get on board is short-sighted and will cost us hundreds of thousands of quality, good-paying jobs. The Ontario Greens want to build back the lower and middle class and make life more affordable. We want to build sustainable, connected, livable communities where people can afford to have safe housing. We want a world-class education system, a comprehensive healthcare system, and we have a plan for that. I have a 3-year-old and a 3-year-old nephew and a 14-month nephew. They will be living with the consequences of our decisions today. I want to be able to look them in the eye and tell them that I did my best to leave them with a strong, sustainable, livable community and a healthy planet. The time to act is now. We can't afford to wait any longer. The Green Party of Ontario has new solutions to old problems. So on June 2nd, I'm asking for your vote. Vote green. Vote for a bright future. Vote Julie Stewart. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Zachary.
Thank you. I think it's important to recognize that a lot of the issues that we see today, such as inflation and a lot of the division that we've seen within our society, is because of government, bad policies, and the divisive rhetoric of our political leaders. I'm here to take a stand and fight back against this. And I believe that the key to prosperity in Ontario and for the people of Ontario is through freedom. And that is through reducing the size and cost of our provincial government, finding market-based solutions to economic issues, empowering business owners, and encouraging foreign investment through lower taxes and deregulation, respecting personal expression over one's lifestyle, their identity, and their religion, defending property rights, individual rights, bodily autonomy, and the rights of parents to raise their children how they see fit, and by holding establishment political parties accountable for expensive and inefficient programs and lobbyist corruption. Only the Libertarian Party stands for these things, or I should say, it's nice to see that there are some new parties popping up that also stand with these libertarian values, such as the New Blue and the Ontario Party, and I hope that we can continue to work forward together to promote these ideals. Again, I believe we need to address the price of housing by reducing red tape for developers. We need to fight inflation and the rising cost of living by reducing the size and cost of government, cut taxes to put money back into the pockets of the people of Ontario so that they're free to spend their money how they choose, invest in the businesses that they want to choose in, purchase electric vehicles if they're able to afford to, and again, reducing personal income taxes and other corporate taxes as well to spur on economic growth in the region, and as well as minimizing the impact of the Bradford Bypass on people in the region by promoting green solutions, ZacharyTisdale.ca and ZTisdale at social media. Thank you.
Thank you, Zachary. Brent.
Constituents of York-Simcoe, election time is your time. It's your time to use your democratic right to decide who you want to govern. When a government is elected, you have little control over how they govern, especially you have a government that doesn't listen to the people, rules the people, rather than serves the people. Your time is now. This is what we have seen the past few years at Queen's Park, a government that continues to add emergency powers to their portfolio even when the emergency is over. If a government's policies are reasonable and the government is serving the people, you don't need emergency powers. The people will follow good leadership. Queen's Park has fallen into a dangerous groupthink mentality where everyone thinks the same, talks the same, and acts the same. One has to struggle to find a difference between the main parties. How do they differ? One also has to struggle to find a difference between Premier Ford's style of government and that of Prime Minister Trudeau. A true conservative would provide opposition to Mr. Trudeau's tyrannical and divisive style of government. We need politicians who think differently, bring a different perspective, challenge the ideas of the government, and push them to do better. Belinda Carahalios, our only sitting MPP, said this: "There is no party in Ontario, in the Ontario legislature, defending the taxpayer, defending small business, defending places of worship, promoting freedom, promoting democracy, or fighting political corruption. Insanity is voting for the same parties over and over again and expecting different results. It's time for a change. York-Simcoe, I offer you my service, and I hope you take me up on my offer. Vote for Brent Fellman, New Blue, for York-Simcoe." Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you all for your closing remarks. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have. I want to thank our candidates who are here with us today for their participation, for their efforts, and for their dedication to the York-Simcoe riding, and the Georgina Chamber of Commerce and Rogers TV Georgina for their partnership. Candidates not here were offered a 2-minute free time by Rogers TV, and those will appear, those in attendance and who chose to do so will appear at the end of this debate. You have the ability to watch the debate anytime. You can watch it again. It's on TV, online, thanks to Rogers TV Georgina. The debate will air multiple times on Channel 10, live streamed on rogerstv.com, on the Rogers TV YouTube channel, as well as the Georgina Chamber of Commerce website at georginachamber.com/elections. This will take place right up until Election Day. And once again, we will be alive on election night in the Rogers TV Georgina studio, and we will be covering the results close to home and right across the province. Thank you to our audience for watching at home. We hope these discussions will be helpful when you cast your ballot on June 2nd. Now all you have to do is go out and vote. Thank you so much to Rogers TV Georgina. For more information, check out our website, georginachamber.com/elections. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Hi, I'm Caroline Mulrooney, and I'm running for re-election as the Ontario PC candidate for York-Simcoe. In 2018, I had the honor of being trusted and elected by the residents of York-Simcoe, and over the last 4 years, our government has worked hard to deliver on our promises. Now, we need a government that will continue to listen to people, to support our businesses and economic growth, and that will stand up for our communities. There is still work that needs to be done, and I'd like to be able to continue to do that work to represent the priorities of the people of York-Simcoe. And that means advancing the work of the Bradford Bypass and protecting Lake Simcoe. We have so much work that needs to be done here in York-Simcoe, and I am hoping that I will get the honor of continuing to do that. The Ontario PC Party has a plan that will give a tax break to taxpayers, a plan that will put more money back into people's pockets, and a plan that will create new and better jobs right here in Ontario. York-Simcoe is a very fast-growing area of Ontario. with Bradford and East Gwillimbury being two of the fastest growing municipalities in the province. Our infrastructure, our schools, our hospitals, and our highways need to be able to keep up with that growth, and our Ontario PC party will get that job done. It has been an honor to represent the diverse needs of the communities across the riding, and I am committed to continuing to work hard on behalf of the people of York-Simcoe.
Hello, my name is Alana Hollander, and I'm your Ontario Party candidate for York-Simcoe. I was born and raised in Newmarket and moved to the Marsh when I got married to my husband, John. I also work part-time as an environmental technician, and I also homeschool our two children, William and Neve. I don't consider myself a politician, but part of the reason I'm running is that the Ford government has been very restrictive during the pandemic, and I'm looking to ensure that people's rights and freedoms aren't going to be infringed upon in the future by forcing our children to wear masks in school, forcing people to be vaccinated to keep their jobs, not allowing people to see their loved ones in the hospital, and not allowing people to be able to associate and be part of the community. The Ontario Party was started in 2018, and in 2021, Derek Sloan became the leader. The purpose of the Ontario Party is to bring back true conservative values to the voters. We hear a lot about vote splitting, such as, if I vote for the Ontario Party, I will be taking a vote away from the Conservatives. But the Conservatives started splitting the vote by pushing social conservatives out. People need to vote on principle. Throwing your vote away would be voting for a party that no longer represents conservative views. Not throwing your vote away would be voting for a party who actually believes in what you believe. You need to vote for someone you can trust. The mainstream party candidates are just a name on the sign. They can't do anything their leader doesn't want them to. Ontario Party candidates have the freedom to vote on whatever they need to for their constituents. As a member of the Ontario Party, I also can't be bought, and I'm here for the people because I'm just like you. I'm a member of this great community who lives, shops, and works here. What affects the community affects me as well. As James 2 says, we need to treat everyone the way we want to be treated. And we can do this by making policies that protect men, women, children, and the unborn. Together, we can bring back conservative values to Ontario. Thank you.